All right, so get this right. We're diving into the story of Jamaica's first recorded serial killer.
Wow.
A man they called the Mad Doctor of Edinburgh Castle.
That's a pretty ominous title.
It is, right? It's the 1760s colonial Jamaica.
Okay.
So imagine the heat, the bustling port city, the sugar plantations.
I see it.
But also, the stark reality of over 200,000 people enslaved.
Yeah.
And amidst all of this, right, travelers start vanishing.
Vanishing?
Yeah.
Like without a trace?
Without a trace. So by the end of this deep dive, you'll understand the chilling story of Lewis Hutchinson, his crimes, and his unsettling legacy. And it's all pulled from this fascinating article you sent over.
It's a story that truly captures a dark side of history, wouldn't you say? I mean, it's not just about a serial killer, is it? It also offers a glimpse into the complexities of colonial Jamaica.
Okay, so let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Our mad doctor, Lewis Hutchinson, was born in Scotland in 1733.
Right.
He trained as a doctor, and then just before turning 30, moved to Jamaica.
Huh. Seems like a pretty standard story so far.
It does, right.
Until you consider where he chose to settle.
Okay.
Instead of a town or, a city, he buys this remote estate in St. Anne Parish.
Oh, really?
And, get this, he names it Edinburgh Castle.
Edinburgh Castle.
That choice alone speaks volumes, don't you think?
So he names his estate Edinburgh Castle. What do you make of that? Could it be like a way of asserting dominance, almost like he's creating his own kingdom in Jamaica?
It's certainly a powerful statement.
Right.
Edinburgh Castle, back in Scotland, it's this imposing fortress, a symbol of military might. Was he trying to project a similar image in Jamaica? Or was it a longing for the familiar? A way to hold on to his Scottish identity amidst the vastness of the British Empire? I don't know, it's a question that adds a layer of intrigue to his character right from the start, I think.
And don't forget, the article even mentions that he might have stolen the cattle he raised there, so maybe there were hints of his criminal tendencies right from the get-go.
That's a great point. A castle named after a stronghold back in Scotland, potentially stolen cattle. It's like the foundation for a much darker story is already being laid.
Speaking of a darker story, things take a sinister turn with travelers heading from St. Anne's Bay towards Kingston, which was a major route back then.
Right.
They'd pass by Edinburgh Castle and then, poof, vanish.
It's like something out of a chilling folktale, isn't it?
Yes.
Picture yourself traveling along that road, right?
Yeah.
And you hear whispers about this mysterious castle and the strange figure who resides there.
Oh, yeah.
You'd be looking over your shoulder, wouldn't you?
Absolutely. I can practically feel the tension building. And of course, rumors started swirling.
Oh, I bet.
What were people saying? What did they think was happening to these travelers?
Well, imagine a time before instant communication.
Right.
News traveled slowly, often distorted through word of mouth.
Yeah.
So you can bet there were all sorts of theories, some more outlandish than others.
Right.
But one particularly chilling idea began to emerge, that Hutchinson was somehow responsible for these disappearances.
So we've got a remote castle, a mysterious figure, and a growing number of missing people. But how did that mad doctor label come about?
Well, that's where things get even more disturbing.
Okay.
There were reports of two distinct ways Hutchinson targeted his victims. Sometimes he'd simply shoot travelers outright as they passed by his estate, just like a brutal and efficient way to eliminate them.
Wow, that's cold-blooded. Talk about taking matters into your own hands.
Exactly. But there was another, even more chilling method he employed. Sometimes he'd invite travelers into Edinburgh Castle, offering them food, refreshments, and entertainment. Almost like a spider luring unsuspecting flies into his web.
So the tension is building, and then, bam, he kills a British soldier. This changes everything, right?
You're right. The killing of John Callender in broad daylight was a turning point. It was such a brazen act, it shattered any illusion of safety and forced the authorities to take action.
It's like he crossed a line he couldn't come back from. But what about the other alleged victims? Was there any evidence linking Hutchinson to them?
Remember those rumors about a mysterious figure preying on travelers? Well, they weren't entirely unfounded. When authorities finally searched Hutchinson's home, they found 43 watches and a huge amount of clothing.
Wow.
Can you imagine the chilling realization that those belongings likely belonged to the missing travelers?
It paints a vivid picture, doesn't it? Those personal items, they become silent witnesses to the horrors that took place within those walls. But here's where we need to address the elephant in the room, right?
Yeah.
We can't talk about colonial Jamaica without acknowledging the horrific system of slavery that was deeply entrenched at the time.
You're absolutely right. And unfortunately, it played a direct role in Hutchinson's crimes.
Okay, let's talk about that. What role did Hutchinson's slaves play in all of this? I mean, it's a dark part of history, but it's important to understand the full context.
He forced his slaves to dispose of the bodies, turning them into unwilling accomplices to his horrific crimes. They were trapped in a nightmare, subject to his every whim, forced to participate in acts that must have been deeply traumatic.
It's hard to fathom the level of fear and despair those people must have endured. Their lives were already controlled by a brutal system, and then to be forced into this, it's truly heartbreaking.
And to make matters even worse, there was this sinkhole on the estate.
Really?
Known as Hutchinson's Hole. Imagine the chilling image of this gaping chasm, a physical reminder of the lives lost and the secrets it held.
It sends shivers down my spine just thinking about it. But even in the face of such horror, there's this element of human resilience. The slaves' testimonies were crucial in bringing Hutchinson down, weren't they?
Absolutely. Their voices, though silenced and oppressed, ultimately played a crucial role in exposing the truth about what was happening at Edinburgh Castle. Their bravery in speaking out, even with the potential danger it posed, cannot be overstated.
It's a powerful reminder that even in the darkest of times, the human spirit can find a way to shine through. But getting back to Hutchinson, this public killing of a British soldier, John Callender, was really the beginning of his downfall, right?
You're exactly right. Up until that point, he'd operated in the shadows. His victims, often travelers, alone and far from help. But killing a soldier, a representative of the British Empire, that was a reckless act that brought the full weight of the law down on him.
Can you imagine the fear and chaos as people realized the mad doctor was on the loose? It must have been pandemonium.
You can bet it sent shockwaves through the island. Hutchinson, realizing the game was up, he tried to flee to Old Harbor, hoping to escape by ship. Picture him, desperate and panicked, realizing that his reign of terror was about to end.
It's almost like a scene from an action movie, right? The villain making a last-ditch effort to escape justice. But what happened? Did he manage to slip away?
Not quite. As fate would have it, he was captured by the Royal Navy. Talk about adding insult to injury, eh?
Yeah.
Trying to escape by sea and getting caught by the most powerful naval force in the world at that time.
Wow, talk about poetic justice. I can almost picture the scene, the sails billowing, the officers in their crisp uniforms, and Hutchinson captured and defeated, facing the consequences of his actions.
It's a powerful image. And from there, he was brought back to face trial. Now, the trial itself is a bit of a mystery. The article mentions that he was only charged with one murder.
Oh.
Likely the soldier's, despite the many others he was suspected of committing.
Wait, only one murder charge? But what about all those watches and clothes they found? And the slaves' testimonies? It seems like there was enough to connect him to more victims.
You'd think so, wouldn't you? It's possible the authorities at the time were focused on securing a conviction for a clear-cut case. The murder of a British soldier would carry a lot of weight, and they likely felt it was the most straightforward path to justice.
It's interesting to think about the legal system back then and how differently things might have been handled. Was there any speculation as to why they didn't pursue charges for the other alleged victims?
There are a few possibilities. Maybe they couldn't prove the other murders beyond a reasonable doubt. Or perhaps they felt that one conviction was enough to send a message, and further investigations were deemed unnecessary.
It makes you wonder if there were other factors at play, maybe even powerful individuals who wanted to sweep certain things under the rug. It wouldn't be the first time, right?
You're raising some thought-provoking questions. Remember, this was colonial Jamaica, a society with its own power dynamics and hierarchies. It's certainly possible that some influential figures might have had reasons for wanting to limit the scope of the investigation.
It definitely adds another layer of intrigue to the whole story. It's like a historical true crime puzzle with some pieces missing.
Exactly. And it highlights the limitations of our historical records.
Yeah.
We often only get glimpses into the past, and it's up to us to fill in the gaps and grapple with the complexities. But one thing is for certain. Despite the questions surrounding the trial, Lewis Hutchinson's time had run out.
So, what was his fate? Did he confess to any of the other killings or maintain his innocence until the very end?
Unfortunately, the article doesn't provide those specific details. But regardless of any last-minute confessions or denials, he was found guilty of murder and sentenced to death. In 1773, Lewis Hutchinson, the so-called Mad Doctor of Edinburgh Castle, was hanged in Spanish Town Square, bringing his reign of terror to a definitive end.
Well, at least justice was served, even if it wasn't for all of his alleged victims. It's a grim end to a chilling story. But what about his legacy? What happened to Edinburgh Castle after all this? Did it remain a place shrouded in fear and mystery?
Well, the castle itself still stands today, although much of its original structure has been lost to time and the elements. But its legacy is undeniable. It stands as a silent testament to the darkness that unfolded within its walls. A stark reminder of the human capacity for both good and evil.
And given its history, I can't imagine it escapes the realm of local legends and ghost stories. I mean, a place with such a dark past must have all sorts of spooky tales attached to it, right?
You're absolutely right. Over the years, Edinburgh Castle has become a focal point for ghost stories and folklore in Jamaica. Locals whisper about the spirits of Hutchinson's victims, said to wander the grounds, unable to find peace after their untimely demise. Some even claim to have seen the ghostly figure of the Mad Doctor himself lurking in the shadows.
Ooh, that's creepy. It's fascinating how places with such dark histories can become magnets for these sorts of stories. It's like the events themselves leave an imprint on the very fabric of the place, creating a sense of unease and intrigue that persists for generations.
And it makes you wonder, doesn't it? Are these stories simply a way to cope with the darkness of the past? To find some meaning or explanation for such senseless violence? Or is there something more to it? Is it human nature to be drawn to the macabre? To find a thrill in the unknown?
It's probably a bit of both, wouldn't you say? The need to understand, combined with that natural human curiosity about things that scare us. It's like we can't resist peeking into the darkness, even if it sends shivers down our spines.
You've hit the nail on the head. And in a way, these ghost stories serve to keep the memory of the victims alive. Even if their individual stories have been lost to time, they become a symbol of the tragedy. A reminder that even in the darkest corners of history, there were real people whose lives were cut short.
That's a poignant thought. They become a part of the collective memory.
Yeah.
A cautionary tale whispered through generations.
Exactly. And it reminds us that while Hutchinson may be gone, the impact of his crimes continues to resonate, both in the historical record and in the whispered legends that still surround Edinburgh Castle.
It's a powerful reminder that the past is never truly past. Its echoes continue to reverberate in the present. This deep dive has been quite a journey, exploring the historical context, the brutality of the crimes, the unanswered questions, and even the ghostly tales that have sprung up around Edinburgh Castle. But there's still this one big mystery hanging over everything. What drove Lewis Hutchinson to commit these acts in the first place?
Yes. The ultimate question. Was he truly mad, as his nickname suggests? Or was there something more at play? A twisted ambition? A desire for power? Or was he simply a product of a brutal time where violence and exploitation were all too common?
It's a question that's plagued historians and armchair detectives for centuries.
Yeah.
We've explored the potential influence of his Scottish heritage, the choice to name his estate Edinburgh Castle, the rumors of stolen cattle, his brutal methods, and the chilling role his slaves were forced to play. But the true nature of his motivations, well, they remain elusive.
Perhaps there is no simple answer.
Right.
Maybe it was a combination of factors.
Yeah.
The power dynamics of colonial Jamaica, the isolation of his estate, some personal demons, that we can only speculate about.
I guess we'll never know for sure, but that's part of what makes this story so compelling, right? The mystery, the unanswered questions, the way it forces us to grapple with the complexities of human nature. It all keeps us thinking, keeps us engaged.
You've hit the nail on the head. And that's the beauty of exploring history, especially these darker chapters. It's not just about learning the facts, is it? It's about grappling with the complexities, the ambiguities, and the enduring questions that linger long after the events themselves have faded into the past.
It's like we're trying to piece together a puzzle with some pieces missing, always searching for a deeper understanding. So to you, our listener, I'm curious. What stands out to you in this whole tale? What do you think drove Lewis Hutchinson to commit these acts? Was he truly mad? Or was there something more at play?
It's a question worth pondering, isn't it? And as we've discussed, there might not be a single satisfying answer. Perhaps it was the intoxicating allure of power in a society where he, as a white plantation owner, held dominion over others. Maybe the isolation of Edinburgh Castle, perched high above the island, fueled a sense of detachment from societal norms, allowing his darker impulses to flourish.
And we can't discount the brutality inherent in the colonial system itself, the exploitation of enslaved people, the pursuit of wealth and dominance at any cost. Perhaps Hutchinson was simply a product of his environment, a man warped by the very system he benefited from.
That's an important point. His story forces us to confront the uncomfortable realities of that era. The violence, the greed, the dehumanization that were often woven into the fabric of colonial life.
It's a stark reminder that history isn't just dates and names in a textbook. It's made up of real people with complex motivations, capable of both great acts of kindness and unspeakable cruelty.
And sometimes those complexities lead to truly horrific acts that we struggle to comprehend even centuries later. If this deep dive has sparked your curiosity, I encourage you to delve deeper into this chapter of Jamaican history. There are books, articles, and even local legends that can shed more light on Lewis Hutchinson, Edinburgh Castle, and the chilling stories that still surround them.
Remember, though, as with any historical exploration, keep an open mind, consider different perspectives, and you might just uncover your own insights into the mad doctor of Edinburgh Castle and the darkness he left behind.
Exactly. After all, the most valuable knowledge is the kind we actively seek out, the kind that challenges our assumptions and pushes us to think critically.
Well said, and I think that's a perfect note to end on. We've covered a lot of ground today, from the bustling streets of 1760s Jamaica to the chilling depths of Hutchinson's Hole. But this is a story that lingers, a tale that sparks more questions than it answers.
And that's the beauty of a good deep dive.
Right.
We provide the spark, the essential information, the context, the questions that beg to be explored. But ultimately, it's up to you, our listener, to continue the exploration, to delve deeper into the mysteries and draw your own conclusions. So until next time, keep asking questions, keep learning, and never stop diving deeper into the fascinating and sometimes unsettling world around us.